Hello friends, I am Pratish Bar and I welcome you all to Avirat Thoda Social. Year is 1971. India is on two front war with Pakistan, both east and west sides fighting with us together. The key to win this war is to deprive East Pakistan from all the supplies that can ever get to them, now known as Bangladesh. The task is laid upon Indian Navy and on 4th of December, Indian Navy under Operation Trident conducts a daring raid to destroy Karachi harbour. A move that turned out to be decisive in determining the outcome of this war. In recognition of that achievement, 4th December since then is celebrated as Indian Navy Day. On occasion of Indian Navy Day, today we have a very special guest, Prem Chandran sir with us, who has served with Indian Navy for over 16 years starting 1978. We have sir to talk with us about current Indian naval strategies, equipments and geographical advantages. Sir, a very warm welcome to our channel. It's very good to have you here.
Thank you, Pratish.
Start talking about 4th December as a Navy Day. Can you elaborate or explain how the entire operation of destroying Karachi Harbour was conducted? What were the sequence of events? How it was achieved? What was the preparation behind it?
Yeah, sure, Pratish. As you rightly put it, actually, those days, 71 and all, we were just, India was an infant democracy. After the earlier wars, we were still recouping. Okay, then 71 war came as a surprise to India. Actually, Pakistan, in fact, had their submarines and everything, and they have deployed their submarine along our Indian coast called PNS Ghazi. Okay, that was waiting at Visakhapatnam harbor to sink our aircraft carrier INS Vikrant. Okay, okay, INS Vikrant was to move out and along the channel, because there is a channel and thereafter they will enter into the sea. So Vikrant was to move out of what you call Visakhapatnam harbor for the operations, and somebody from the Indian Navy only, from the Indian Navy, somebody had sent a message to Pakistan saying the mother is going without the child. So okay, there was some communication like that. In those days, we used to use the Morse code and all that. There was no encryption as such, what is available today in digital technology. So those days, it was all depending upon you send a message and it will be decoded by the respective officers, and they will come to the meaning at last. Okay, we will not even know. The person who is receiving in the ship will not know what it means really. It will be some sort of some sentence or some code or whatever, and there are to be decoded through. It will be decoded manually, through books. So this message had gone, and somebody had a doubt. Okay, how this message has come, from where it has come, and then they found out there was a guy from our Indian forces only had sent a message to Pakistan saying that the Vikrant is moving out uh, uh, without accompanied by a submarine, because normally when an aircraft moves, there will be so many ships which will be guarding them. Okay, because it's a very costly affair, because we cannot afford to lose a some aircraft carrier. So submarines will be there underneath, and there will be ships around the what you call carrier. Okay, like frigates will be there, mainly destroyers will be there, and there will be a fleet formation. When we move out. So that day somehow this guy came to know that Vikrant is moving without submarine protecting it from the underwaters. So what has happened, this message, suddenly somebody realized that there is something fishy in this message. Then they asked to move INS Rajput. There was another ship. It was a Petya class ship, I think. I don't really remember. So we asked, the naval headquarters asked INS Vikrant to stay back, and INS Rajput was asked to move out of the harbor for the operations. So when INS Rajput was moving, this PNS Ghazi, the submarine was waiting. It was a US made submarine given to Pakistan to fight India. Okay, so they were working underneath the water, and we have detected them first. The Rajput has detected the submarine first and fired the torpedo. So it got blasted. It finished actually, and number of bodies came floating, and there was oil slippage everywhere because submarine has been sunk. Okay, then that was the first major blow we could give to what you call Pakistan. And on the western front, this was happened on the eastern front. On the western front, our navy from Gujarat, moved towards Karachi, And it was totally, as I told you, they have taken it, totally by surprise, because they were not really intending that this will happen, because they were expecting a bigger ship to fight the Pakistan Navy, but the smaller missile boats, which has only the missiles on board, nothing else. It's a small boat, it's not in size also, and the capacity also, with the manpower also. They were towed actually. They were towed, and their radars couldn't recognize it, because it was in the mid of the night. And once the Karachi harbor is lost, Pakistan's main navy is lost. There is nothing left for them to fight back. So there the surrendering started actually. It all started there, and the army, what they have done. They have done a greater job in East Bengal, and from the land also they have conquered. So the war has culminated in the total loss of Pakistan. That if you go into the war history, it was a totally clean war, wherein there was no question of balancing. Like they can claim that we were also equally fighting, and they can also say that we won the war and India has lost. In many places, in many incidents, you must have heard that they won the war. Even in the Kargil also, they don't still agree, accept that they have lost the war. They still say that no, we won the war. In Pakistan, if you go and ask them, they will say that Kargil war to humne jeet gaya. So we also
Right.
actually know what has really happened and how we conquered and took the what you call strategic hills back to our fold. But for Navy had a greater role than both the other forces, because on the army front they were fighting at Kashmir, and Air Force was standby, and Navy was asked to move on. Okay, then from Gujarat coast, we have attacked Karachi harbor, and that was a midnight operation, and we have used our missile boats, which are not those ships are not meant for long time survival at sea, because it has got its own fuel uh, capability limitations. But somehow we have attacked Karachi harbor, sank their four ships and hundreds of naval personnel, and it was a terrible shock to Pakistan. And as I understand, because I was not part of the Navy those days, I joined in '78, as I told you. Then it took years for Pakistan, to reconstruct the harbor. So to commemorate that event, we are celebrating Navy Day on 4th of December.
So essentially, we can say that ये वही operations था which decided the fate of the war in 71.
Exactly. Actually, 71 war, in fact, goes to Navy only, as I would say, because we did a marvelous, attempt to finish enemy, and we could succeed in that. We had a great leadership, okay, naval leadership also, and very dedicated sailors, and we won the war. Okay, so that has gone into records.
Let's start about your career in Navy. You served about 18 years with Indian Navy, 16, 18 years. How
16
was
years.
that as an experience for you? 16 years, sorry. How was that
Uh,
as experience for you?
No, it was a great experience, because if you talk about Navy, most of the people in remote villages, they are not aware of a force like this, because normally people know about Army and Air Force, but Navy is not seen, because many places there is no sea, and nobody knows anything about ships. Because I was also one of an individual like that. I'm from a remote village of Kerala, so I didn't know anything about Navy. Then I was with my father in Tamil Nadu, and there was a recruitment rally going on, and I have attended that, and got selected, and cleared the examination, and joined the Navy. That time there was a slogan, says, join the Navy and see the world. So it was quite fascinating to see the world without spending any money. Okay, otherwise I didn't know anything about naval ships and what it does in the high seas, etc. But it was a totally different experience, though the life was a bit difficult on board ships. Uh, we enjoyed it, thoroughly enjoyed it. That is what I got to say.
Sir, as we usually say it, we normally call Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj as a founder of a naval power in India, alongside his admiral Kanoji Angre. They both laid the they were both were the pioneers of Indian Navy. From then to now, how are our strategies evolved and how crucial of a step it was for us?
Fine. I can give you an overview here. See, we must go back to whenever we discuss about Indian Navy as a force, we shouldn't forget the forefather of Navy. The forefather of Navy is considered as our Chakrapati Shivaji Maharaj. Okay. So he was the person who had a, he was a visionary who thought that it is important for India, or those days he was a Maratha leader, but he knew that Navy is very important to withstand the aggression from the foreigners. Okay, that time he was fighting Aurangzeb, as we all know. That was within our country, but from the forces abroad, like Dutch, Portuguese, and English, for stopping them, it was necessary that we should have a strong navy. So he has constructed around 50 odd ships in Colaba and some other places, and it was all capable of, protecting the or ocean line across Maharashtra. So that was the starting actually. Naval Navy starts from there, and he had great admirals. You must have heard the name of Admiral Kanoji Angre. So to what you call respect them, we have given number of our establishments. We have given the name of Chhatrapati Shivaji. Our Navy's main mechanical engineering training is conducted in Lonevala, the establishment called the base. We call it as naval base. It's INS Shivaji. Okay, INS Shivaji is our engineering, mechanical engineering training base, and also we have our NDA in Kadagavasla. It is all most of our naval presence, our major important what you call training establishments and other headquarters, etc., is situated in Mumbai, because the importance of Navy. The Western Naval Command is the largest command in Indian Navy, and Admiral Angre was a great warrior, and to respect him, we have a base called INS Angre just near to our Reserve Bank of India, Colaba. So it all started from there. From there, now today's Navy, it is totally changed. Actually, those days it was a purely conventional Navy. We didn't have an engine also for a ship. Okay, it was all rowing and all that methods. That conventional method. From there, we have advanced so much. Now we have around 150 ships, and with various operational capabilities. And we are a Navy. It is difficult to reckon with. Now any force, any country will think twice before attacking our country. To that extent, our Navy has grown, and it is further growing. There is no limit now, because we have, as I can tell you, like we are capable of building our own, constructing our own what you call nuclear submarines, aircraft carriers. And earlier days, as you know, we used to buy ships from UK, Russia, and other countries. But nowadays we don't buy anything from outside. We indigenously build our ships, our own ships, and with any class of ships we are capable of building now in our Mazagon dock in Mumbai, Visakhapatnam, Goa, and many other places.
Sir, as we commonly say, the mainstay of our armed forces are really the men and women who serve. More than machines, it's them who add the value. What are the key challenges a sailor or a person faces on a ship when it's actually deployed?
Oh, let me tell you, that's a good question, because most of the people, that question definitely matters, because most of the people in the civil, they really don't understand what is the, what sort of difficulties these sailors, the people who are on board ships face actually. Mind you, it is not at all, an enjoyable life. In army, even if they fight at the front and, they have their own difficulties, at least they can, they have ample space to, sit, have food, okay, or sleep or whatever. But in Navy, it's a small shell, so the sea will be at times, very harsh. It will be rough, and the ship will be rolling and pitching. Rolling in the sense it will be tilting both sides, and pitching is there. The waves will take the ship. The waves will lift the ship high, and it leave it there. So it will come and bash on the water. So that is called pitching. So normally 80% of the people will have seasickness. Seasickness is you will be feeling sleepy, you will be feeling tired, and you will not be able to work to the maximum. But slowly, when you do service on board ships, you get used to it, and you will be fighting fit. And also the food, etc. We store the food for months together. It is all kept in the cold storage. We don't get any fresh rations from harbor. Okay, we don't come to the harbor only. For months together, we'll be fighting. We'll be training on the high seas, and that's a difficult primitive life. But normally, a sailor is made to accept that, and he will learn to live in that situation. So naval life is difficult, but when we go to the other shores and when we come to our Indian shores, we celebrate. Sailors have more fun. Actually, there is a say in Navy that sailors have more fun. They don't hesitate to celebrate when they get a chance. They come on the come along the harbor. They go out. We have institutes. We have places to enjoy ourselves, and that way it is all compensated. It is a balanced life, you can say. Naval life is like that. Actually, we have uh, initially we have a basic training for 6 months in different locations, and thereafter we'll be selected for a certain branch. The branch is electrical, mechanical, maintaining the ships, okay, store, the clerical jobs, and many other aviation for aircraft maintenance. We have specialized people, sailors. So they will go to different places for their advanced training. That is called professional training. After successful completion of the course, we are transferred to various ships. Okay, that is not in our control. The management, in the sense the headquarters, decide as to where the requirement is, and accordingly they post the people to different ships, and we start our service there. And it is not that the people will be sent to only one category of ships. We will be strapped to different ships, and our experience and our knowledge, it get advanced accordingly. So that's the way it goes. So Navy is a place wherein a person can learn a lot. Frankly speaking, after 16 years of naval service, when I came out, I could match anybody, in the sense I was totally exposed and I was totally aware of as to what is supposed to be done in civil. So I was successful in my civil career also. I should say it is all, the credit goes to my naval background. I admit that.
So, geographically, the way India is located, what are the key advantages we have as a navy with our current infrastructure as well as our geographical locations?
No, see, actually, as far as Navy is concerned, actually, India being a peninsula, because we have water all the three sides, from the east, south, and west, we have water. We are surrounded with seas. Okay, on the east it is Bay of Bengal, on the south it is Indian Ocean, and on the west it is Arabian Sea. So we have a great role to play to protect our country, because Navy has a very, very important role to play, and I think we are playing that role perfectly. That is what I would say. And uh, the way the ships and the technology, we are coping up with the advanced technology. We can compared to other world nations, we are not lagging anywhere. We are, I think, as I read somewhere, we are, I think, the fifth as far as the strength of this thing is concerned. We're fifth in the world, the fifth largest navy we have. Okay, efficiency wise, of course, it is debatable. US say that they are the best, and China says they are the ultimate. So it goes on. Let's not get into that discussion. So our navy is quite capable, and navy is expanding in multiple directions. Like we have patrol vessels. Like so our Indian Coast Guard is just in the supporting role of our coastal areas. They have sufficient ships. They have immense manpower and facilities. Okay, and the outer side, our ships and other ships, submarines, and aircraft carriers, and all those things are there. And we are still building one of the aircraft here, and another second aircraft carrier plan is in place. So the Navy is growing with leaps and bounds, I would say.
Sir, our naval strategy is continuously evolving and we changing the way we operate. We are putting a great amount of effort nowadays on amphibious assault. And as you had mentioned that you yourself have been part of amphibious operations. What exactly is amphibious assault? How it's carried and what are the elements of it?
Fine. Actually, it's a special kind of operation. Amphibious operations are normally meant for supporting army. Actually, their navy has got the role of supporting level action. Actually, there is a special kind of ships called landing craft ships. Landing craft ships are normally, we have a number of landing craft ships. It is meant for taking the army and their vehicles and their ammunition to a given location to fight the insurgents or the enemy or whatever. Okay, in many of the operations, this will be very handy and useful. So this kind of ships are specially designed. Actually, it is not like other warships which are meant for flying at the ocean, and doing different kind of other operations. These landing craft ships are meant for they can accommodate more than 12 that Shaktiman trucks, that huge trucks, army trucks you must have seen, plying on the road. So those trucks can be 12 trucks can be accommodated inside the what you call ship, and hundreds of army men can be
So,
also carried, and ammunitions, everything. And these ships will sail on the sea and land on the shore. It has got a special feature. Actually, the keel and other things are designed differently, and it has got two doors called bow doors and rim doors. Bow door is the door which will be opening sideways, and the rim door will be opening towards the front, actually, from inside. So the water will not go in. When the ship is moving, there will not be any water seepage or any such problems. Okay, so this will go to a given shore, and almost it will be, see, there will be hardly 1 or 2 feet of water, and the ship can go on the sand and stay there, and the army will move out within no time. And that operation, really, it will be a fantastic thing to see, which I never seen thereafter, because the army guys are so powerful. Okay, within no time you will find them laying a sort of road, by wooden planks and other things. They have got so many special materials, they will put it in the right fashion, and the trucks will be moving on those planks, so that the sand and other problems will not disturb their operation. So they will go on, and within few minutes they will
right.
be out of your sight. They'll be going inside the land and fighting the enemies, which was a fantastic thing I learned. That was my first ship. In fact, I was a small young guy, young sailor, which of 18, 19 years old. So it was a different kind of operation, and I enjoyed it. That was my first ship. I served there for about 1 year. And there are multiple kinds of ships, sailboats, minesweepers, okay, and many kinds of ships are there, all expected. And there are submarine rescue ships, and there are oil tankers which are supposed to be going at sea, and mid of the operation they will be able to fuel the ship, like that. There are many kinds of ships are there, and navy is in that way well equipped as of today. Actually speaking, there will be some intelligence gathering. Actually, before conducting any operations, it's definitely not a sudden operation anticipating that there will be somebody waiting for us and they are waiting to be killed. It's not that. They are also prepared equally, but we must have done our homework properly. That is called the intelligence gathering. So we know normally, before we conduct an operation like that, we know that as to which direction we should disembark, okay, which area or which angle we should be disembarking ourselves, and which angle we will be moving, and what are the precautions we are expected to take before conducting such an operation.
So now that you mentioned about aircraft carriers, we already have INS Vikramaditya in our fleet, and we have developed capabilities, to be able to build indigenous aircraft carrier INS Vikrant 2, which is in construction. And also we have built and deployed INS Arihant, our own nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarine. What odds these things change for our enemies now?
Regarding aircraft carrier, as you said, we have INS Vikramaditya, which is quite operational, and it is fighting fit now. But of course, it was not built in India. It was bought out from a foreign country. Okay, and we have modified it and to suit our requirements, and it is working. But mind you, INS Vikrant, we had an old ship, that HMS Hermes or something. We bought it from UK. That Vikrant was decommissioned long back. Okay, on the same name, we are building a ship, INS Vikrant, in Cochin shipyard. Okay, and she is already in the water now. Okay, she has the ship superstructure is already built, and the internal fitments are going on. So probably by next 1 year, I think we should the ship will be sailing out of harbor. Okay, so on the aircraft carrier front, we will be having 2 ships then. Even if Vikramaditya will be commissioned after a few years, the third aircraft carrier will be immediately commenced after Vikrant is done, and Cochin shipyard only planning to start the third aircraft carrier. On that front, we are safe now. We require only so many aircraft carriers. We cannot afford to have so many aircraft carriers because it is quite expensive, and it is our operational requirement, the limitation of operational requirement, as you know, what an aircraft carrier can do for a country like India. So we need smaller ships, destroyers, frigates, and so on. We need them in multiple numbers. But aircraft carrier, 1 or 2 are enough, because it's after all a floating platform, for floating what you call aerodrome. Okay, it's an airport basically, because they can store the planes in their hangars, and it will come out and fly off, and they will land on that. That's all the purpose. So there is no other major fighting abilities an aircraft carrier has. But when you talked about INS Arihant, INS Arihant is an Indian-built nuclear submarine. It is a nuclear-powered submarine. It doesn't require any other this thing. It is a nuclear-powered, and it is a highly successful creation of India. Okay, it has got about 1,000 tons of 6,000 tons of displacement. It's a huge one. It's not a very, and it has got about 111 meters length. Okay, in fact, it was commissioned in 2016, 4 years ago, and it is fully operational now. It is based at Visakhapatnam. Our eastern fleet is attached to our eastern naval command. Okay, we have 3 naval commands: Eastern Naval Command, Western Naval Command, and Southern Naval Command. Okay, and the naval headquarters are situated in Delhi. Okay, where the strategic decisions are taken and rest of the things. Okay, so this Arihant can go up to a speed of 40 kilometers per hour under the water. When it is dived down, when it is under the water, means it is inside the sea, it can go up to 40 kilometer speed. When it is surfaced, when you can see, we can see the top portion of the submarine, it can go up to 28-30 kilometer speed. Okay, so it has got a length of around I think I told you 111 meters, and it can go up to 350 meters depth also. Okay, it can dive down to 350 meters. And the speciality here is Arihant has got a different capability. The earlier submarines had only torpedoes fitted into that into those what you call this thing. Okay, ships. But here INS Arihant has got missiles also. That is ballistic missile capability. It can fire to the sky also. Okay, it has got twin mode capabilities like called ballistic missiles as well as torpedoes. Okay, that is a specialty of Arihant, which was built in Visakhapatnam shipyard. Okay, in 2016 it was commissioned into Navy. Okay, it has got about 95 to 100 crew in the sense naval personnel, officers and sailors. About 100 people will be there in the ship in a given time.
Talking purely in the world of submarines, India as a country was operating so far only the diesel electric submarines. A diesel electric submarine normally uses its battery once it is below the water level, and then it surfaces after some time, runs its diesel engine, charges its battery and dives back. हर बार जब शिप सरफेस होता है, we are essentially blowing out our cover, and enemy has an idea or a chance to figure out where that submarine is. With INS Arihant and nuclear powered submarines coming in, now the ship can go beneath the water, it can stay there for whatever time frame it wants. It can destroy land target by launching its ballistic missile right from below the surface of the ocean. It can stay there for whatever time frame it wants. Come back and enemy के पास कोई चांस नहीं है to figure out वो ship कहाँ थी, कहाँ है, and your purpose is served.
Okay, मैं बताता हूँ. Actually, communication तो हमेशा चलते रहता है. Whether it is dive down, whether it is snoring, whether it is what you call parked along the harbor, etc. The communication is always on. Okay, so this submarines has got a capacity to stay underwater for a longer period. But mind you, any submarine for that matter has to surface for their rations, because otherwise people will starve. No, the only dependency is there is no fuel dependency. Earlier, what used to happen, you'll have to come on top, for fuel and other requirements. Here, since it is a nuclear powered submarine, it can go to, as you rightly said, it can go to any length of time under the water. But the thing is that ration has to be collected. So after see, so much of ration they can keep it in their disposal, but at last they have to come out and collect the ration. So that let's not think about that, because normally what happens, there are different kinds of rations also issued to naval people in submarines and all. It is not that we will have fresh ration every time. They have all dry rations. Dry ration in the sense, we have something called a DFRL, Defense Food Research Laboratory, wherein they do a lot of research on how to keep the food without being perished. Like preserving the food materials. They will dry the rations, and that will be packed in a a container or a packet. Okay, then if you put it in the water, it will become keema, it will become pulao, or it will become whatever. Okay, so they use such rations to stay under the water. Okay, they cannot afford to have fresh rations every time, and also they don't wear uniforms, they don't use normal clothes like us. They have disposables with them. Disposable in the sense, That's a special kind of cotton trousers and shirts. Okay, so that after using it, they will just dispose it. They will not wash it and reuse it. Okay, that is what it is called disposable. They carry only such type of dress so that they can, without taking bath, without having sufficient water, even they will be only issued drinking water. Rest everything, they have got a ration control. So only then they can survive in the middle of the sea. And also
Right.
as I told you, the life in a submarine is totally difficult because there is no air available. So it is in a chamber, so you have to learn living in that. There are multiple selection tests conducted before you are recruited. You are selected into serving on board a submarine, because that pressure test and all that you'll have to withstand that. Only then you are chosen to select that branch of Navy. 11 or 12 submarines are there. We are further building submarines in Visakhapatnam now. It is under construction.
So again, with the movie The Ghazi Attack, so many civilians got introduced to a term called sonar. Can you throw a light on how it works?
See, we have got various types of sonars. Okay, sonar is actually basically it's an equipment which has got a transducer. Transducer is a transmitting and receiving antenna underneath the ship. Okay, this particular equipment can detect what is there underneath actually. Okay, if there is a submarine, or if there's a rock, or if there is a mountain or whatever. So these sonars are so precise that it can find out the target, or a what you call submarine under the water. So sonars are see, there are radars and sonars. Okay, radars are what? Radars are meant for surface to surface monitoring. Like for example, there is a ship or a vessel quite far from the ship which is beyond our eyesight. So we see them through the radar. Radar is basically is a radio aid detection and ranging. That is the acronym. Radar is an acronym of radio aid detection and ranging. Okay, and sonar is again, that is sound aid. Actually, in under the water you cannot transmit radio waves like radar, because it will there will be a refraction. Okay, you cannot get the right distance, right how far you see the object away from the ship. That cannot be made out by transmitting a radio wave under the water. So we transmit sound waves. Sound waves doesn't deviate or doesn't refract in the water. So it goes to the target, touch it, and return back to the antenna. So the to and fro time is calculated, and the distance is derived from that particular process. Okay, that is what is sonar is. Sonar is meant for detecting anything under the water.
So, sir, moving towards more of a strategical discussion, now that we have a post of CDS and General Bipin Rawat appointed as our first Chief of Defence Staff, how do you see collaboration building between Indian Navy and Army and Air Force? We recently had a news about Marine Commandos or Marcos being deployed on the Ladakh front. How do you see the whole picture now with CDS in place?
Actually, CDS was a requirement. In fact, if you ask me, see, in many other what you call leading armed forces, US and other places, they have got this post actually. And also India also had, during our initial days, after post freedom, we had a Manekshaw as a field marshal. Okay, in a different name, but it is CDS only. Okay, so what the advantage of having a CDS is that there is a better synergy between the armed forces. Suppose Navy, Air Force, and Army is there. In a given situation, if all the three has to function, has to go for the operation, if you work independently, definitely we are not going to meet at any point. Okay, everybody will try to establish their importance. Okay, rather, or they will prove their point. So ultimately, it is not good for the country, if you really ask me, because Navy will be operating in their own way, and Army will go in their mode, and Air Force will do what is necessary, what they think is to think it is fit. Okay, but when there is a CDS, there is a combined thought process. Okay, we call it as military synergy. It is very much required, because if there is an operation tomorrow, like about China's case is there, now we are really the CDS is helping, because every front the CDS will be able to take the final decision, and it has to be accepted by all the three chiefs. Army, Navy, and Air Force chiefs has to listen to him, and also CDS will take orders from the Ministry of Defense. So the hierarchy is well defined, So earlier it was, because if the defense ministry is there, there are so many bureaucrats sitting in defense ministry, they will decide the things, and wherein they have no experience as such. The bureaucrats doesn't have the experience to control the army and the defense chiefs. So a CDS was a requirement. It was a long pending requirement, and now there is a clarity in our approach. Like defense ministry will discuss things, and that will be transpired to what you call CDS, and CDS in turn will talk to the other three chiefs. The general, admiral, and the air chief marshal. So things will happen in the proper manner. In brief, I am talking about. This is what I understand about the role of CDS, and going forward, CDS will have more and more roles to play. It is just starting now. Now, General Rawat is just given that post, and it is still getting matured. Okay, we do not know how far it will go, and going forward, we will be fine tuning the system, and definitely it is going to lead to a better operational capabilities. There is no doubt about it.
So, sir, you talked about three different naval commands. I think the biggest or the most centralized location from our Navy point of view falls in Andaman Nicobar Islands. Which command does it fall under, and how strategically important it is as a port for Indian Navy or Indian military in general?
Andaman Nicobars falls under Eastern Naval Command. Okay, because it is in the Bay of Bengal. So there are hundreds of islands in Andaman Nicobars. Okay, which is now owned by India, and we have our presence, naval presence, and army also is there. Our naval presence is there in Port Blair. That is the capital of Andaman Nicobar Islands. Okay, so Port Blair, we are concentrating on Port Blair, which has got a good harbor today. Okay, and strategically, if you look at that place, Andamans, beyond the Andaman is Park Straits. Okay, it comes to Malaysia, Singapore, okay, and Indonesia and all those places, and it is connected to the what you call China Sea also. So strategically, Andaman Nicobars is got to play a very pivotal role in our operations. Okay, that is the reason. Recently, Narendra Modi, our Prime Minister, has connected Andaman Nicobars with optical fiber, undersea optical fiber cable, because the communication is must in any operations. The most important thing is what? Communication. If you cannot communicate on time, you have lost the war. Okay, you'll have to talk. You'll have to be in touch continuously. So thinking that he has connected it, Andaman Nicobar. Nobody could even think of having a underground cable connecting Andaman Nicobars to our mainland India. Okay, that has happened now. So going forward, you will see the changes. Okay, we will be further developing on Andaman Nicobars. Number of other islands are being prepared to have multiple other operational requirements. Okay, facilities that will happen. Going forward, it will happen. And beyond Port Blair, we will be occupying some more islands there, because we have got enough islands, which are most of them are not even inhabited. Okay, it is just lying like that. It's a space, it's a land, a fantastic land available in a strategic position in the global defense arena, if you really see it.
With that, we are done with the question. No doubt about the respect, sir. I mean, you have been there risking your lives for us. You know, the fact that you were standing there guarding Mother India is phenomenal. It was truly an honor to talk to you today. I mean, I genuinely thank you for being with us, and it was amazing experience to talk to you. A
Thank you very much.
genuine thank you from Avira team.
Thank you, Pradesh, Dhruv and team.
So friends, that was our video with a seasoned naval officer Premchandran sir. We are trying to get you as close to Indian Armed Forces as we can. May that be with our video on Indian Air Force and now on Indian Navy Day. Hope you like this. Do let us know in comment section how do you feel about the video. Like the video, share this with your friends and subscribe to our channel. Avirat Thoda Social.